All right, Algebra. I hope we are doing okay. I hope we had a nice weekend. This is our video lesson for Monday. My apologies for not being here today. But let's go ahead and jump right into the lesson. What I want us to do for our warm-up is just do a little bit of reflection of our exit ticket from Friday, because I know we had a long weekend, or I guess a normal weekend. But I want to go over this before we continue with our lesson. So we're talking about multiplying positives and negatives and also multiplying negatives and negatives. So the first one has been done for us. It says 5 times negative 6 gives us 5 groups of negative 6. So that means we have negative 6 5 times. Well, 6 times 5 is 30, so 5 groups of negative 6 is negative 30. If this was difficult for you, we're gonna use this information provided above to help us fill out the rest of the table. So here we have 5 times negative 6, and then bottom one is 8 times negative 4. So that gives us 8 groups. We can say 8 groups of negative 4. Well, again, using the option or the example above, we can see that our answer here is negative. It's going to be the exact same. So I just do 4 times 8, which is 32, but I make it negative. So I'm going to do 32, make it negative. All right. I see the example or the words provided below follows the same pattern. In math, we always talk about patterns. Patterns are super important. So I see the pattern down here is the same as above. So I'm going to follow the same pattern for the math expression. So I have 10 groups of -7. Well, 10 groups of -7. Okay, that matches the same pattern. So now I need to do the same thing. I know my answer is going to be negative, and I have 10 times 7. So 10 times 7 is 70, so I get -70. All right. Now this next one is a little different. But again, we have information provided in our example here that helps us figure it out. So uh, up top, we have 10 groups, right? Because it's positive. But remember, negative is also opposite. So here, I'm just going to copy and paste. Whoops, will it let me? I'm just copying and pasting exactly what the one below says. And the only thing I'm going to do is change my numbers. So the opposite of my first number is -4. So the opposite of 4 groups of -10. And if you want to just put the numbers, that's okay. So the opposite of 4 groups of -10. So remember, we have -10, but we have the opposite of that. And you guys know what's the opposite of a negative? Excellent. Thank you, Brandon and William. I know you guys are usually pretty quiet, but I appreciate you being loud today. But yes, the opposite of a negative is positive. So that is why our answer here is positive 40. So that's a really big idea. Remember, when we have two negatives multiplied together, they do become positive. So the way we can think about that as the way it's written here, the opposite of a negative. Well, the opposite of a negative is positive, right? So now I have a complete example provided above. Let's go ahead and use that information to write the one below. It says the opposite of 5. So the opposite, so that's going to be -5 of -7. So I have -7 here. So the opposite of -5 groups of -7. So I know 5 times 7 is 35. And I know my answer here is positive because this is a -7, but I'm doing the opposite of that because I have this negative here. So the opposite of a negative is a positive. All right, now let's take a look at the bottom one. This one is going to be a little interesting. We're combining the information that we have up here and we're applying it down here. So whenever our first number is negative, we can think of it as the opposite. So that's what I'm going to write. The opposite of, and what's my number? 6. The opposite of 6 groups of, and then my second number is my groups. So I have groups of just 2. So the opposite of 6 groups of 2. Well, if I have groups of 2, that's positive. But we're doing the opposite of a positive, so that makes it negative. So that should be -2. 12. If you're looking at this, you say, Mr. Martin, I have no idea what's going on. That's okay. It's really necessary, even when things are difficult, for you guys to follow along. Because one thing, like that really helps us is repetition. So even if this is a difficult idea for you to understand, copying and following along is really important. I know sometimes we want to just like stop, but we can't just stop. We have to keep going. We have to try because that is what helps us uh, get, that repetition to help us make the connections in our brain. Anyway, this last one is pretty tricky because we have two options here. Um, because our answer is negative. And we know that there's two ways we can write a negative or get a negative solution, right? Like so our first number can be negative, that gives us a negative as we see here, but also our second number can be negative, like in this 8 times negative 4, which gives us negative 32. So it doesn't matter which way we write this, but the way I'm going to write it is like this. So I'm just going to copy and paste and say the opposite of six groups of, or no, whoops, the opposite of three groups of five. You can do the opposite of five groups of three, three groups of five. It doesn't matter. It's going to give us the same answer. But the way that I have it written here looks like this. Negative 3 times positive 5. All right, cool. That was our warm up. Let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. Um, so we have patterns here. Let's take a look at our patterns. All right, we got 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 1 is 3, and then 3 times 0 is 0. So what do we notice about our numbers? Pause the video here, take 30 seconds, and put your answer. What do we notice? Okay, so hopefully you pause the video, you put an answer, and you share it with the class. I'm bringing us back together. Hopefully what we noticed is that these numbers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So let's continue on. So look, we're following the same pattern here. So we have 9 times 6, or 9, 6, 3, 0, and then negative 3. So this number here keeps getting smaller. This number here keeps getting smaller. So what is the next one after 0? That's going to be negative 1. So we can write that as 3 times negative 1. 3 times negative 1 is going to give us negative 3. All right. So where it says write the missing expression in the pattern. Okay, so we can do this here. So 3, and then as it says, you shift and then 8. So if you press shift 8, it gives you the asterisk, which is the multiplication sign times negative 1. That's what we should look for. That's what we want to see. So following that pattern, let's answer these questions below. So pause the video, answer, and then I'm going to go over them here in a second. Okay, so hopefully you paused and you put what you thought was the answer. So we should know this first one because we did it in the last one, but that's going to be negative 3. Well, we know 3 times 2 is 6, so 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, and then 3 times negative 3 should be negative 9, right? So all we're doing here is just following the pattern. So we're using the information we know to find out information we don't know. This is just another way of thinking about it. Hopefully this is helpful. Let's keep this train rolling. So what do you notice? What is the same about each number sentence? Again, pause this video, take 30 seconds, and try to answer your question, or do your best to answer it. I guess, it's okay if you're right, it's okay if you're wrong, but just do your best to make some observations. Alrighty then. Okay, so what we should notice is that both of our answers have threes in them, right? And then also, whenever we have one negative sign like we have here, there's only one, our answer is going to have just one negative sign as well. And we'll get into what it's like when we have two negative signs here in a minute. But let's keep this train rolling. So we have, I want you guys to do this one yourself. We have 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times negative 7 is, pause the video, put your answer. Okay, unpause the video, and we get 6 times -7 should be -42. We get a check mark. That's correct, right? Remember, a positive times a negative, right? This is our negative groups of 7, or we have 6 groups of -7. So we're going to the negative side, which gives us -42. Here, same process, pause the video. All right. So same thing, we have -2. But how many times do we have -2? We have -2 8 times, which is going to give us -16. How are we feeling about this? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Talk to your facilitator about it, because I obviously can't hear you. Let's keep going. Okay. What can you say is the sign of the result when you multiply a negative times a positive? What about dividing a positive and a negative number? That's an interesting question. I want you guys to pause the video here, answer it, and then we'll go over it. Okay, yeah. So when dividing with a positive and a negative, the answer will still or will be The answer will be negative. Why? Well, multiplying and dividing, they're kind of in the same family. And that's something like we'll get into later with fractions and that kind of stuff. But multiplying and dividing, they're opposites, right? But the process we use with the positives and negatives is exactly the same. So uh, like 3 times -3 is -9. Well, if I have -9 divided by 3, well, I'm going to have to get -3 because we're just doing that process backwards. So, uh, yeah, what patterns do you notice? What's the same about each number sentence? What is different? Um, this, I think we've already gone over, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. The patterns we should notice is that uh, the numbers are decreasing. So we have -9, -6, -3, 0. But this is where it gets tricky. And this is the part that is hard for a lot of students, but it's not gonna, I think you guys are gonna get it. I think you guys are gonna get it. All right. Ooh, okay. So now we have negative, or our answer is a +3. I'm going to give you guys a hint. Our first number here is going to be -3. So -3 times blank. Ooh, what are we going to multiply this -3 by to get a +3? Pause the video, put what you think is the correct answer, and then come back whenever you think you have it. All right, yeah. So this is really, really interesting. If we have a -3 times -1, that's going to give us +3, right? We've talked about this before. We talked about it yesterday, or not yesterday. We talked about it on Friday, but this is like saying we have groups of -1, and then we have that the opposite 3 times. So it's the opposite of a negative, a positive. How many times do we have that group? 3. So that is going to give us this +3 here. Again, we did talk about this on Friday, so hopefully it's kind of starting to click in our head. It's okay if we're having difficulty. But let's complete the table here. Pause the video, go ahead and complete it, and then I'm going to complete it after or once you think you have it. All right, so as we just discussed on the previous slide, we have -3 times -1 gives us +3, and then we're just going to follow that same chain. Negative times a negative is positive, so that gives us +6, and then the next one is +9. Here, let's fill in this table. I want you guys to fill it in first, pause the video, fill it in first, and then come back. All right, so we are back. So we have 6 times -4. So this is -4, and we have 6 groups of that -4, which is going to give us -24. Well, now we have -4, or the opposite of that, because it's the -6, right? So you have -4 times negative 6 is like the opposite of negative 4, which is going to come back to positive 24. All right. So, what can you say is the sign of the result when you multiply a negative and a negative number? So, what's that's basic is like in your answer, what sign do we have? Is it positive or is it negative? Take some time to fill this out, share your answers with the class, and then come back. Okay, hopefully, what everybody kind of concluded is whenever we have a negative times a negative, the answer becomes positive. That's it. So I know this is a lot of difficult work, but the answer of two negatives multiplied or divided by each other gives us a positive. All right. So I want you guys to fill this table out on your own. Pause the video here and then come back and I will fill it out, help you guys fill it out. All right. So for part A, we have 3 times 5 equals 15. All right, here we have negative 3 times positive 5. Well, what do we think it is? So we have one negative sign, so it's going to be negative 15. And you will see a check mark here when you have it correct. So again, we have a positive 7 times negative 4. Positive 7 times negative 4 is going to be negative 28. And then a positive 2 times negative 9 should give us negative 18. All right. And then here, negative 6 times negative 8 will be negative 48. And then negative 4 times positive 5 is negative 20. And then 10 times negative 7 is negative 70. All right. Hopefully that was easy for us. Let's move on. So we have negative, or we're at slide 28 right now. Um, Same thing. Here we have four, or I want you guys to pause the video. Actually, we'll do the first one together. Let's do the first one together here. We have 4 times 9 is 36. Here we have negative 4 times negative 9. All right, we're going back to the idea. We have negative groups of negative 9. We have, but we have the opposite of four groups of that negative 9. So the opposite of a negative becomes positive. So that is why our answer here is going to stay positive 36. All right, so pause the video and fill out the rest of the table and then come back when you're ready. All right, so now that we're back, we should hopefully notice that all of these are going to be the same. 2 times 8 is 16, so negative 2 times negative 8 is going to be positive 16. Negative 3 times negative 7 is positive 21. Negative 4 times negative 10 is positive 40. Negative 5 times negative 6 is positive 30. And then negative 12 times negative 13 is positive 156. All right, cool. I hope we're doing all right with that. Let's keep this train rolling. I want you guys to now do these by yourself. So if you need to, look back at the previous slides, but double check your negative signs. Negative signs are always difficult for every student I've ever had. So pause the video here and then come back whenever you're ready, once your table is filled out. All right, so we have negative 4 times positive 2 should give us negative 8, and then negative times a negative is positive, so that's 64. A positive times a negative is a negative, so that's negative 35. Negative times a positive is negative, so that's negative 30. And then positive times a negative is negative, so that's negative 4. And then a negative times a negative is positive, so that gives us positive 56. Oops, nope, 54. There we go. Sorry, multiplication error. 9 times 6 is 54. Okay, dividing. Okay, Remember, the process with dividing is the same. So we have -4 divided by +2. So all we're doing is going backwards. Let's do the first two. All right. We have -4 divided by +2. Well, that's going to give us -2 because what we're looking for is a number that we times by +2 to get -4. So it's basically like saying -4 is our answer. Which number times this gives us that? So same idea. We have -8 times +4. Which number can we multiply times +4 to get -8? Well, that as well is going to be -2. Okay, so pause the video, do the rest yourself. All right, now let's come back to it. So the next one is kind of tricky because this is a pretty large number, but I know that half of 60 is 30. So half of 70 is going to be 35. But this is going to be a +35 because my 2 is negative. Oh, no, whoops. Sorry, it's a -35. So because I have a negative divided by a negative, or sorry, a positive divided by a negative is going to be negative. Same thing here. -30 divided by positive, or -90 divided by +30 is going to be -3. Nice. And then positive divided by a negative is negative. So that's going to be -1. And then here, a negative divided by a positive is going to be uh, -3. There we go. All right, so remember, when dividing uh, and multiplying, reverse operation, or sorry, let me say that again. Division and multiplication are reverse operations of each other. So the process is kind of the same, right? So dividing a positive and a negative integer will result in a negative answer. Just like multiplying. Negative times positive is negative. Negative divided by positive, still negative. All right. So now the next few slides from slide 32 to um, 38, I want you to answer these questions. So I'll show you how to do it with 32. You can also read it here. So it says press deal to receive your cards, drag cards from the hand to the red and blue areas. The goal is to create two groups of cards with the same product using as many cards as possible. So let's take a look. All right. So in the red group, we want the same product. Product is the word that we use for multiplication. So I have 2 times 4, I know equals 8. And then I have 1 times 8, which also equals 8. So remember, two groups. So these two numbers are being multiplied together. This is like 2 times 4 in the red here. And then in the blue, it's like saying 1 times 8. So let's submit it. Sweet. The robot scanned it and we got a nice high score. Let's try again. I'm just going to show us what it looks like if we make a mistake here. So if I put 4 here and then I do 2 times 1, I click submit. Well, that doesn't work because 2 times 1 does not equal 4. All right, so the robot will respond to you. So I want you guys to do this for the remainder of class, and then once you have all of those complete, just answer. How well did you understand this lesson, and how did you feel about this lesson? All right, thank you guys very much, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.